Hello and welcome to our very first video tutorial in Visual Basic Language. In this set of videos, I plan on going over the Hello World program and then modifying it as we go using different techniques and different styles, incorporated DLLs, custom DLLs, classes, libraries, SQL connectors, database calls, inner joins, left joins, and all that other good stuff for databases. So this is just the first video. In this one, we're just going to go over a very, very basic program, and we're going to just do the basic Windows framework for .NET and how to create the Hello World program. So first thing to do is, right now I'm using Visual Studio Community 2017. You can get that from Microsoft by going to Google and typing in Visual or VS 2017, and Microsoft will give you the downloads page. It's visualstudio.com/downloads, and then select this one over here, the free download. It's Community Edition. If you want to get professional, if your company has Enterprise Edition, you can go ahead and download these and use them the same way. There is some differences, but for what we're doing, there's going to be really no difference between any of them. So go ahead and download Visual Studio. Once you get it installed, and just follow what we're going to do here. So I opened it up. I started Visual Studio. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go New, and we're going to select the project. And then on the side here is all the installed languages: C#, Visual Basic, C++, F#, SQL Server, and all the different languages you got. So we're going to actually pick a .NET Core, .NET Standards, in the class, Windows Universals. I don't want to use this one. And I don't want to use this. So we're actually going to do just a basic Windows form with .NET, a Windows form app. And then we're actually going to name this one Hello World. Hello World. And I like to put number 1. I like to put the number after it. So this way here, if I do multiple or different versions, I know what version it is. I can do version 1 and have it look one way than version 2 and change the looks and not have to worry about copying the code over or any craziness. So usually here, make sure you define the file name and you do something that you're going to remember, or something that's going to tell you exactly what the file is. In plenty of times I've named the program something and then it turned into something completely different, and it took me forever to find what I was looking for. So in this case right here, we're just going to call it Hello World 1, and we're going to click on Create, and we're going to let Visual Studio go ahead and create the project for us. Now, what Visual Studio is going to do is it's going to give us the ability to edit the visual aspect of our program and give us a toolbox, as we see the toolbox on the side for the visual aspect, which is right here, the design, as they call it, the design. And then the actual back code itself is completely different from the design. So Visual Studio, back in the Java days, we used to actually have to program, we had to code the X and Y for where we put a button or a text box or a label. And then we'd actually have to do that all in the code, then run it to see it, because there was really no visual editor back in the day. With Visual Studio, they brought the visual editor to us. So what this does, this actually draws the frame for us, and it allows us to visually drop buttons and drop text boxes and drop whatever we want into this frame here. And then it'll write the code in the background for, put this button at 100 by 200 and make it, 100 by 100. So it'll write all that code for us. We no longer have to do that, and we can see it before we actually compile it and run it. So it gives us kind of a visual platform to work with developing the UI, the user interface, and the look of our application. The code itself is hidden behind the actual UI. So separate those two mentally in your head and get the UI completely away from the code. The code links to the UI to call back and forth, but the UI is developed separately from the code. Some people could be excellent coders like myself. I'm a good coder, but I'm a horrible UI developer. So, and I hear it all the time because that's why we hire graphic arts people in this world, and we get their graphics. They make it look pretty, we make it work. Simple as that. Alright, so down here on the side we got the properties. So in this case right here, we're looking at the forms right here, Windows system.windows.forms.form. This is all the properties, and I like to put it in A through Z. Some people like to keep it categorized. But this is all the properties for this actual form or whatever's selected inside of here. So as you can see, we come down to our size, 802 by 453. If I change this to say 700 by, and then I do 700 by 300, you'll notice that when I actually tab off of, when I leave this field right here, that this is going to adjust in size over here. So see, we can actually edit the dimensions here, and it will actually take effect here, or we can actually, shrink and grow it here, and then this will automatically update. You can use the maximum size and the minimum size. The minimum size box will allow us to set only a minimum size, where no matter what, we can't go past that. So I'm going to set it to 200 by 200. So even if I grab this and I go to shrink it, see, it won't go anything past 200 by 200. So if I change this to 10 by 10, then I can actually go down to 10 by 10. So see how we're able to go a lot further down. So some programs will, what they'll do is they'll put stuff over here. So they'll put stuff over here, and then they'll set the max size to this. But that stuff, it's still, the max visual size is here, but the actual program still recognizes those objects outside the frame. But they classify them as hidden objects, so they won't actually be seen. So, but that's just part of what we can do over here. Other stuff that we can do, IME mode, MDI container. That's something that we'll look at later on. An MDI container is kind of the Windows mentality, but inside of an actual Windows form. Background colors, we can always change the background colors and all that good stuff if you want. So we can actually, we'll change that from controlled to active caption. Now you see the background color changed. Auto size mode, grow only. We can actually grow and shrink on auto size. We can set auto size to true or false. Alright, so very basically, let's go ahead and first things first, we're going to drop in a text box. So inside the toolbox, we have all the Windows controls that we'll ever use. You can always add other controls such as, let me see, I'm trying to think. Ajax controls, like if you're doing a website and you import the Ajax DLL, you can add the controls inside of here as a separate menu. Look at the Microsoft website to tell you on how to add the Ajax controls to here. There's a little bit of work to it, but it's not that bad. But just for simplicity, I'm not going to do it. So basically, we're going to put a label in here. So first things first, what I do is I just click on the label, drag it, and then drop it. You can also just double click the label itself, and it will create it close to the center. If you created them, you can highlight, just like anything else, you can highlight all of them, and it will select everything in that selected area, or you can select them individually, drag them around. So we can do this one, or we can do those two. The delete key will get rid of them. They're gone. When we click on a label over here, the properties windows then changes to the properties for that one label. So label 1 is pretty much, this is all the properties for that label. So with label 1, the stuff to remember is that the ID and the text are two different things. The text is what it's going to say, and the IDs are what we're going to internally refer to that label. So in this case right here, we're going to see the name or ID. Some of them, like button, will say ID. This one will say name. Name label 1. That's what we're going to internally refer to this label. So if I say label 1 dot anchor, it's going to go to this label, label 1, and then it's going to pull up this property right here, and it's going to tell me label 1 dot anchor is top left. So label 1 dot auto size, if I call that from the code in the background and say currently set to true, if I say label 1 dot auto size equals false, it'll actually, for this label 1, it'll change the auto size to false. So the label and the text are completely different. So for the text, this is where we want to change it to our hello world. And this will allow us to actually create once we hit enter, that then the text then changes to hello world, but note the name still stays label 1. So we can also change the background color. We can change the font. We can change the foreground color to anything we want. So if you want to use hex in here, you can actually use hex code. I can change it to gray, so now you see it turn to gray, which doesn't look all good on our background. So change the active caption back to black. So what else do we use in here? Okay, so this right here, this is our location. So as we drag it inside the world here and we drop it down, the location gets updated. As I told you before, in the Java days, back in the day before we had the visual editors, we had to guess this one. So I'd have to sit here and go 200 by 100 and hope that that was in the right spot, and go, oh, that's off by 10, so go 200 by 90, and then okay, so that's right. And then the other piece is how wide is it, and in this case right here, our size is 62 by 13. 13 is the standard size for standard height for our for a label. So as we add more text to it, we'll see that the size should have adjusted. Yep, so now it's 127 by 13 because we added more text. So if we actually change this to, say, 64, it won't let us because of the way the Visual Studio and the label is set up, is that the label size is going to be the number of characters that are in there. So we can't actually play with the size inside of here. So what we do is just set the text to be the text. So that's the Hello World piece with just a very basic label. I'm going to cut the screen down, shrink down. And we're actually going to just run this program. So to run it, we just click on Start. And what that's going to do is that's actually going to build our project for us. So if we right-click on the project, we can build it, we can rebuild it, we can clean the project, which will clear out which will clear the variables, it'll clear out the temp files that we have already built, and then that gives us kind of a brand new build. Sometimes that has to happen. Sometimes when you build a project, you get errors, and you look at the errors and it says, manifest file such has been damaged. So you know that you've not changed manifest files. So the solution is to clean the project and then rebuild it. And then most of the time you'll get that right. And then publish. To publish the project, that'll actually allow you to put a published version in the aspects of a website. That'll actually put the class and the ASPX files, but not the Visual Basic files, onto a web server. So that way it's an actual published version of the website. When we build it, it's just going to actually put into our debug folder with all the actual code and the files itself. But the published version is just brings it all down to the exe and literally gives you a published version of your code. In this case, we're just going to build it. So what we'll do is we're going to run it, which clicking on Start will, being that we're targeting debug, it will actually build it and run it for us. So let's do it. And you'll see everything happening down here. See, build started. Then it's going to go through. It's going to give us some information about what it built and whether there was an error or not. And then at the end, it should say something like running Hello World 1. So right there, it's building that file. And here we go. There you go. And there's Hello World 1. And it operates just like any other Windows. Just like the normal Windows stuff, that a Windows application. When we minimize it, it goes down to the bar, and then when we maximize it, it goes all the way up to the new. We can resize it, because we got the 10 by 10 thing. It doesn't allow me less than 10. And the header itself is already, I want to say it's 20 or 30 pixels. So your title is always going to be there at 30 pixels. So just like any other program, minimize, maximize any normal frame. So we built the whole entire frame very basically just by dropping a label here, changing the text to hello, and then running it. Now we're done. Alright, so when we X out of that, it will bring us back into our project. All this diagnostic stuff should go away. The diagnostic stuff on the side for small programs really doesn't matter just yet. We'll get into that later on as we progress in this class on different in this training. Sorry, on different reasons and different meanings for that stuff on the side. So that's the very basic Hello World program. Just starting up Visual Studio, create a new project, adding a label to your form1.vb. And in the next one, we're going to go over actually text and add the text box and then handling the text. So watch the next video.